We all know how some scenarios in the UFC are likely to unfold, yet we keep hoping for surprises, for things to somehow go our way. For example, despite the flood of power slap posts on UFC's official channels, fans make it clear they're not on board, venting frustration in the comments and hoping this support fades away. Then there's the pressure on Jon Jones to defend his belt against top contenders like Tom Aspinall, or if he rebounds, someone dangerous like Sergey Pavlovich, instead of recycling fights with inactive veterans. Or consider Alex Pereira. Wouldn't we all love to see him tested against a high-level wrestler like Magomed Ankalaev? These are things we fans crave, but the real question is, will the UFC deliver, or do they have a whole other agenda that benefits only them? Join us as we dive into the possible UFC scenarios that could split the fan base between those who cheer the organization's next moves. Nobody can deny that Alex Pereira is currently one of the UFC's biggest stars and, as such, the golden goose carrying every pay-per-view card on his back. One of the key elements of stardom is activity, and no other UFC champion is as active as Poatan. He's not just as active as a rabbit in a carrot field, he's defending his belt with vicious knockouts that send opponents to another dimension. However, if you take a closer look at his opponents, it seems like the UFC matchmakers might be steering him away from a matchup with a solid wrestler who could threaten his dominance. Why put him against someone who could pin him down for 25 minutes to a unanimous decision victory when they can match him against average grapplers or strikers he can dominate, keeping him one of the UFC's top draws? Magomed Ankalaev recently pulled off a typical Dagestani performance against a top UFC contender, Alexander Rakic, securing another unanimous decision win. Everyone knows that the Russian is a well-rounded athlete with a respectable wrestling arsenal that could pose serious problems for Pereira if they faced off. But the question is, will the UFC take the risk of dimming the shine of their biggest star? Magomed didn't even need to face Rakic to solidify his position as the top contender. He was already next in line. But the matchmakers seemed hesitant to give him the title shot, instead matching Alex with another stand-up fighter like Khalil Roundtree, who presents less danger to the Brazilian than a powerhouse wrestler like Magomed. Was this a simple coincidence, or part of the UFC's master plan to protect their prized asset? The reality, which fans might be reluctant to admit, is that while Magomed is a skilled fighter, his style includes nearly as many decision victories as finishes. He's winning fights, but not necessarily winning over fans, as he's not the type to always deliver explosive finishes. Still, he is the worst possible matchup for Alex Pereira, and if they lock horns for the title, it's likely Pereira would be at a disadvantage. That's not an outcome the UFC would favor, with their favored cash cow potentially being manhandled to a dull, unanimous decision loss. So, what's the UFC's plan for Alex Pereira? The answer may lie in some strategic maneuvering. Pereira has already mentioned wanting to switch divisions to keep collecting belts and heads. He's hinted at a move back down to 185 pounds to face Dricus du Plessis.
I can't buy the fact that this guy is who he says he is.
I mean, he's learned the game, you know? Yeah. It was after, after Jake Paul's last fight, and Jake Paul called out Alex Pereira, and then so he went on and made that video of like Dana White calling him just to get people talking. He's very clever about this stuff, and I think it comes naturally to him. He does have a sense of humor. I don't buy this for a second that man is never going to weigh 185 pounds for the rest of his life.
A favorable matchup that could further boost his popularity. To avoid Magomed, the UFC might offer Pereira two more attractive options: a return to middleweight to reclaim the 185-pound title, or waiting for Jon Jones to retire after the Stipe fight to move into the heavyweight division, aiming to become an even bigger attraction. Moving up to heavyweight could be tricky, as he'd face challenges like Tom Aspinall. But if Pereira could get past Aspinall, there would be no denying he'd reach superstar status on par with the likes of Brock Lesnar or even Conor McGregor. Tom may be good on the feet, but that alone may not be enough against someone like Poatan. He would need to take the Brazilian down as quickly as an anchor sinks in the ocean. Yet, with years of experience, Pereira now holds a BJJ black belt and has developed solid defensive skills. given that every round starts on the feet, and with his incredible knockout power, one clean shot could be all it takes to put Aspinall out and make Pereira the UFC heavyweight champion. Imagine the marketing potential and financial gain for the UFC if they could boast their first 3-division champion. It would be nothing short of groundbreaking. Dana White and Hunter Campbell are no rookies. They know how to run a business. A key piece of their grand strategy is protecting Alex Pereira from a fight with Magomed by giving him an irresistible offer to compete for the UFC heavyweight belt. But how, you might ask? Jon Jones is currently set to face Stipe for the undisputed title, and Jones could be an even tougher matchup for Pereira than Magomed. Yet, if you believe Jon Jones will beat Stipe and then continue defending his title, you're probably placing a bit too much trust in Dana White's plans. Jon Jones has already secured his place as arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time. Don't just take our word for it. Ask Dana White, who never misses a chance to sing Jones's praises.
There's no doubt that Jon Jones is special. He's the greatest of all time. He's undefeated. He's never lost a fight ever in the UFC. He's fought all the best competition out there. I don't know what's going to happen from here on out. I'm just happy we got to see what we saw tonight. I'm a big believer in ring rust and what it does to you. We didn't even get to see any ring rust. We just went in there and literally made it look like nothing, like it was the easiest thing in the world for him to do. He's a total freak of nature, and he's the best ever. Not only is he the greatest light heavyweight ever, he looks like the greatest heavyweight ever too. There were a couple of interviews leading up to this fight where he was saying, I'm going to make this look easy. And I thought that was a silly thing to say. The guy is unfucking believable, man. He really is.
But the reality is, Jones doesn't need to battle young, hungry fighters like Tom Aspinall to cement his GOAT status. Fighting the newer generation carries a real risk, one that could threaten his legacy. In Jones's eyes, Aspinall may simply look like another overhyped contender, not worth his time. So the UFC knows that Jones will fight and likely defeat a past his prime Stipe, who hasn't won since 2020, and then retire as an undefeated champion. Dana might even pull some strings to erase Jones's DQ loss to Matt Hamill, creating an even cleaner narrative to market Jones as the greatest fighter to ever do it. Jones believes that defeating Stipe, who's often considered one of the 3 heavyweight GOATs alongside Fedor Emelianenko and Cain Velasquez, would mean something for his legacy. And maybe it would have 5 years ago. But in 2024, beating a 42-year-old semi-retired firefighter doesn't quite carry the same weight. No disrespect to Stipe, he's a true legend, but the reality is that he's no longer the fighter he once was. Securing a win over a new generation contender like Aspinall would better support Jones's claim to be the best of all time than a win over a semi-retired heavyweight. When you look at other GOATs like Anderson Silva, Fedor, Alexander Volkanovski, and Jose Aldo, they all share a similar story. Each defeat the greats of their era and the top contenders of their time. But when the next generation arrived, they all eventually faced devastating losses. Volk ran through the greats before him like Aldo and Chad Mendes. He cleared the featherweight division by beating all the best contenders of his generation, but when a new generation fighter like Ilia Topuria arrived, the Australian met a dead end and was viciously knocked out. Jones, however, is a smart guy. He knows when to hang up the gloves, and he's confident the Stipe fight will be his last. Jon might stay active to defend his heavyweight belt if the UFC made him an offer he couldn't refuse. A fight with Pereira, given that his wrestling would likely give him the upper hand. But with Aspinall clearly next in line, Jones will almost certainly retire after the Stipe fight. Some fans and media might hope to see Jones in a showdown with Aspinall, but Jones will likely call it a career, leaving an open path for Alex Pereira to step into heavyweight, claim the belt, and rise as an even bigger superstar. That, right there, is the UFC's master plan. It's like watching a chess game, each move shaping the future of the organization. With Magomed's recent win over Alexander Rakic, he's now set to fight for the UFC light heavyweight title next. While it would have been thrilling to see Pereira go toe-to-toe with a skilled wrestler like Magomed, the UFC likely won't take that gamble, choosing instead to match Magomed with someone else for the vacant title. In an ideal world for UFC fans, we'd see Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall for the undisputed heavyweight title, and Pereira defending his belt against Magomed. But that's not part of the UFC's grand vision. The plan is for Pereira to wait for Jones's retirement before moving up to heavyweight, where if he can get past Aspinall, he'll likely become an even bigger star. And Jones, he'll ride off into the sunset an undefeated champion. That's the UFC's endgame. This won't be the first or last time the UFC does something fans aren't thrilled about. While MMA is a sport, running an organization like the UFC is, first and foremost, a business. Take a look at the UFC's official social network sites, where boxing videos are sometimes posted. It hints that Dana White might be dipping into another combat sport too.
Look at what boxing did. Everybody's like, oh, boxing. Boxing, every fucking event that they put on, it's a going out of business sale. Let's grab as much money as we can from everybody. We don't care if the event is good. We don't care if the people at home enjoy what they saw. We don't care if the people who came and bought tickets liked it.
Right.
We just want to grab as much money as we can.
Although boxing is a legitimate time-honored sport, many MMA fans find it a bit dull in comparison. Does Dana White care about that? Absolutely not. He might be planning a significant move into boxing promotion, and we'd better get used to a future where MMA and boxing are part of the same package. Then there's Power Slap. Know any UFC fans who genuinely enjoy watching this so-called sport? Probably not. But if it puts money in Dana's pocket, that's all that matters to him. The same principle applies to UFC matchmaking and building champions. Some fighters get special treatment, while others are forced to endure a rocky road to earn their shot. The discontent is there, but as the saying goes, the dogs may bark, but the caravan moves on. Still, there's hope. There's always a chance that Stipe could be injured and have to pull out of the Jon Jones fight. In that scenario, Bones might be forced to face Aspinall, and with that, Alex Pereira could remain at light heavyweight, where he'd finally face a cage matchup with Magomed. And what do you fight fans think about this? Do you believe that Dana White and the UFC have an already prepared grand plan ahead? Leave your thoughts in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.